So I like to read. I can't talk. I love to read. Okay, I've always loved to read, and I came across this book called "All the Women of the Bible," and I don't own this content, but I think like in this age where people want to talk more about women's empowerment, why not just talk from like the original book, you know? And it's nothing. It's just. Anyways, I'm just gonna read through the stories about the women that are in the Bible, and they come not. And this book is totally different. It's set it like it's an actual story, not like a book in the Bible. So it's. I'm just gonna read, and so I hope you enjoy. And if you don't, it's okay. Don't hate. Just scroll. The first story is called Abigail and the Sudden Smile. He what? Abigail, wife to Nabal of Carmel, a wealthy herder of sheep and goats, was horrified. He called David a runaway slave and refused him food for his men. There was plenty prepared for the shearers, the servant exclaimed. And we owe David. His men have been protecting the shepherds and the beasts the whole time they've been in our hills. They've never taken a thing for themselves, not even a lamb, and so they reminded the master, who, having already insulted the man, lost his temper and wouldn't listen to anyone. Abigail finished the sentence with a sigh. And I suppose... Her servant nodded. David will destroy all of us for his ingratitude. See what you can do or we're lost. Abigail paused. This wasn't the first time she'd had to rescue them all from a dilemma into which her peasant shrewd husband's stubborn short-sightedness and greed had thrust them. But it might be the last, and she had no time. Summoning her steward and cook, she learned that there were 5 sheep already prepared, 2 skins of wine, and 100 bunches of raisins in the storeroom, 5 measures of roasted grain in the bin, and 200 cakes of figs in the cooling room. There are still three donkeys here, the steward reported. Excellent, exclaimed Abigail. Then Jacob, will you see to it that the stores are packed on 2 and the third fitted with a saddle and bridle? I'll ride that. Just give me time to dress for the journey. No. On second thought, Jacob, you'd better go on ahead of me with the provisions. Take the spur trail as soon as the beasts are packed. I'll catch up. There's no time to lose. But how will you find them? Asked the cook, who was also wondering where she would get more food for the feast Nabal was sure to order. I'll follow Jacob until I come to the promontory. I should be able to see David coming. All the dust his men will be raising will be visible for miles. Then, seeing her cook's worried frown, she suddenly smiled. Don't worry about the feast, Miriam. Have Judah slaughter 5 more sheep now, and take my key for the reserved storeroom. There's a good supply of figs there, so you can make more cakes and another 5 measures of grain ready for roasting. There are also more raisins. Can you manage with that, Miriam? Oh, yes, wine. I tucked 3 skins in there with the rest, just in case. The last time we had extra. Don't worry. With all that, we'll be fine. A little extra work never hurt any of us. But you, do take care. We need you back in one piece. Not unless I can succeed in deflecting the furious David, said Abigail. Well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. 20 minutes later, she was dressed for travel. As she went to the yard where the mule awaited her, saddled and bridled as she and the mule preferred, she spotted the puff of dust on the road. Good man, Jacob, she smiled to herself. We're underway already. She mounted the mule and turned to follow. But whatever shall I say to him, she wondered, then scolded herself. Find him first, Abigail, then the Lord God will help, unless we must suffer from Nabal's. Something is going on here. Riding beyond the provisions, Abigail kept a sharp watch, and as they reached the promontory, she saw him coming toward them. David, armed with an armed troop. She caught her breath, slid off the mule, and prostrated herself before him, still not knowing what she was going to say. Then the words came. I'll take the blame, she began. Pay no attention to Nabal. He really is as brutish as his name. No sense at all. I didn't see your soldiers. My prayer for you is that the Lord God, who kept you from spilling blood with your own hands to avenge yourself, will give all your enemies Nabal's fate. Please give the provisions I've brought to your soldiers, and please forgive our ingratitude. You're fighting the Lord God's battles. Surely he will give you a lasting dynasty, for you haven't an evil bone in you. And then, when the Lord God has saved your life, defeated your enemies, given you rule over Israel, and kept all his promises to you, you'll be glad you took no vengeance on us. And when the Lord God has rewarded you, remember us. And that seemed to be all. Abigail stopped and waited, holding her breath. Would he be angry? Would he kill her outright? Had she done any good at all? Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, David began, and she looked up to see a sudden smile break the dusty warrior's concentrated seriousness. And I have no idea what he said next, she exclaimed to Miriam that night in the kitchen as the cook prepared a late supper for her. She had returned home as soon as David's men had accepted her provisions, checked at once on Nabal, deep in his harvest feast and in no condition for her news, and then made her way to the kitchen to report the steward Jacob following her in. I was so worried to begin with, and then when he began with a blessing and I looked up, he smiled and, well, I've never seen a smile like that before. It was like the sun breaking through the end of a storm and chasing the last of the clouds away. But I don't know what he said. Jacob? He said, supplied the steward with a smile of his own, that your coming to him had indeed saved him from shedding blood to get vengeance on Nabal, and that he would have wiped us all out, all the males anyway, if you hadn't. What did Nabal say when you told him? I didn't. Well, harvest feast. Steward and cook nodded, matching wry smiles with her. Tomorrow, I'll tell him. When Abigail told him, Nabal dropped like a rock. His coma ended in his death. Under her management, the flocks prospered, but when she received a proposal of marriage from David, her eye flew to him, singing all the way. That smile, she would say in later years. What a gift from the Lord God to him and to me. And tomorrow, I'll be reading about Anna. I've never heard about her, so I'm excited. And I love stories. It makes it more personal than just a book. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you here tomorrow. And as ever, and as always, I just want you to know that I am so glad that you exist. I am proud of you, and I love you. I am so glad you exist. I am proud of you, and I love you. And I hope you never ever forget that somebody smiled today because of you. Because you are enough. You always have been, and you always will be.